We'd like to thank Cloud Foundry, our sponsor, for these podcasts from Cloud Foundry Summit in Frankfurt, Germany. Cloud Foundry gives companies the speed, simplicity, and control they need to develop and deploy applications faster and easier. It's open source, easy to iterate, and built to scale. Learn more at cloudfoundry.org. Hey, it's Alex Williams with the News Tag here for the afternoon sessions at Cloud Foundry Summit in Frankfurt. And I'm here with Mike Gehard of Pivotal, Chip Childers of the Cloud Foundry Foundation, and Abby Kearns, also of the Cloud Foundry Foundation. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good, and yourself?
Real well. Real well. Amazing.
Outstanding.
Twice today.
Yeah, here you are. So I thought we'd talk about microservices, and I touched base with Mike yesterday because I was interested in Zipkin. We haven't really written much about Zipkin, and so maybe you could talk a little bit about that, how you're using it, right? Because I think it relates directly to the microservices story that we're starting to see unfold, and which has really kind of emerged fast. I'm curious about the themes around microservices that you guys are seeing, Chip in particular, and Abby, is from a customer perspective here at the summit, but also coming up to the summit itself.
Yeah. Well, you have to be this tall to use microservices. And what's really cool is you could think of Cloud Foundry like a step stool that makes you that tall.
Wow, okay.
Because it does a really good job of a lot of the plumbing that has to be in place if you're going to use microservices effectively, right? So what are you doing when you switch to microservices? You're basically saying, I want to create small, independently releasable, which has a lot of implications, bits of software that are all going to work in a coordinated fashion to build some sort of meaningful business application. So you've got more moving parts, you've got more dependencies, you've got independent release cycles, which means you got to have some sort of sense of how do you version things. The system's more distributed than ever, and there's a ton of benefits to that, but it's also hard if you don't have the right tooling and processes wrapped around it, and team organization structure, and frankly the right skills. So microservices are incredibly powerful, but also you gotta know what you're doing, or at least make sure you have something to support you that gets you up to that level, so you can use them effectively.
So that seems to be the challenge with microservices, like the amount of knowledge that you need really to execute on it properly. There's a lot of different understandings that are required for it. Do you see that with customers trying to better understand, still trying to figure out what that knowledge is that they need?
Well, I think microservices also give you a great way to experiment and try things out. It gives you an opportunity to try and develop small applications and iterate on those small applications and have small wins. And that, I think, is also a great aspect of microservices, is you're able to quickly to Chip's point, quickly iterate and deploy on those applications, but it also means you didn't spend a lot of time there. So there's not a lot of lost time if you spent 2 weeks on an application and decide that it's not quite what you wanted. You're able to quickly iterate on that. But microservices also offer an opportunity for those that are trying to straddle both their existing data, their existing solutions, but also want to take that and use that data in new ways. So small apps, small mobile apps. It's also an opportunity for them to take advantage of all of the feature functionality that Cloud Foundry offers, while still making use of the large amounts of data that they've already collected.
Are you using microservices at all, Michael? Are you?
We've helped a couple of customers migrate monoliths to microservices. So we've got a customer in Denver we've worked with who knows they need scalability. So they're talking Netflix competition app, they knew they needed scalability, so microservices give them that. I can build these little apps, I can scale this piece independent of that piece. So with that comes some costs though. So you have some tooling, as Chip pointed out, you need a platform that supports that. You're running a distributed system. A distributed system is hard. There's a lot of knowledge that has to come with that. And that's, I think, where some of the tools come in like Zipkin and Eureka and Hystrix to kind of take the edges off of those sharp edges that you've got when you go to microservices.
So tell us about those, Zipkin in particular.
So a couple of things show up when you do microservices. The first one is you have a distributed system. So I now have multiple services that need to know where the other services live. They also need to know how many of them there are. So when I'm in Cloud Foundry and I scale to 5 apps, I don't want each microservice that uses that app that is scaled to know where all 5 are. So I use Eureka as a service discovery mechanism.
Okay.
So I come in, it's like a distributed phone book. I want the people service, that people service is over there. There are 6 numbers for that people service. Here's one of them, just go call them.
Right.
So you've got that. When you operate a distributed system, you now have a network involved. The network will fail when you least expect it. So now you've got circuit breakers. When the network fails, I need to somehow give you a default response for a microservice. So the infamous one is the Netflix recommendation service, which used to go up and down all the time. So using a circuit breaker, Netflix implemented a pattern saying, hey, if that service over there is down, I'm just going to give you some canned response of the top 10 movies on Netflix as opposed to your actual recommendation. So you've got those 2 fixed. Now the last problem you have to solve is what happens when one microservice starts misbehaving. I've got this call chain, request comes in the front door, there might be 6 microservices there. What if that middle one, that third one starts misbehaving? Or the 4th one does? I need to know which one of those is misbehaving. So Zipkin gives us the ability to trace the requests through that microservices architecture, from the minute it comes in the front door to the minute it goes out the back door. So I can now start to see call times, how long each microservice takes, in a very visual fashion, so that if I'm having a problem, I can go target it down to a specific microservice and look at the logs on that one.
Which is a lot different than the historical versions of tracing, which would be done, for instance, on a computer, for example. And
I would just attach a debugger.
Right.
I'd know which server was misbehaving. I'd attach a debugger to that process, and I'd have all of those tools available to me. I don't get that in a microservices architecture. I now have this distributed computation platform that I have to figure out what's going wrong.
We've changed the scope of the computer.
We have, yeah.
Just changed the scope of the computer now, so it's much more complicated. But spread out, and you can still have the same pattern, the same user experience that you get with debugging. But tracing's like the step towards that debugging experience that would be distributed.
Yeah. We've just changed the tools we're using for the same debugging experience.
So, how does Diego play in this? In terms of which role as a microservices environment. I mean, we haven't really. You guys had some news last week about Diego, right? With its container. New to container integrations, correct? Like with Docker and such?
Yeah, I mean, Diego's continuing to get larger and larger scale performance tests. And so it's we've got a particular target of 250,000 containers in a cluster, at which point we're going to call it 1.0, marketing versions. Right?
Yeah. Where are you now?
I actually don't remember. It's a fairly esoteric and very specific version that has nothing to do with a 1.0 marketing release. So that's what's happening with Diego, right? It's continuing to be adopted because it's shipping in most commercial distributions of Cloud Foundry, and 2, we're getting it towards the level of scale that it can support the largest Cloud Foundry environments. So that's where that's at. Diego itself isn't really, I would argue, isn't really a story related to microservices, because the larger Cloud Foundry platform doesn't want you to interact with Diego directly. You're interacting with it at the elastic runtime layer, which is, Diego's a component of the system. And we talk about that because it does support, Docker image injection. But really, for Cloud Foundry, the promise of the elastic runtime is, there's our haiku, right? But effectively, it's give the source code into the put it into the system. The source code then, we'll worry about making a container for you.
Give the source
right. Now, let me go
code.
back to it. So here's my source code. Run it in the cloud for me. I do not care how.
Exactly.
Did you hear that haiku?
Yeah, so Ansu Fakori from what's that?
It's here is my app.
Here's my app.
Isn't it?
Here.
Here's my app?
Here is my...
He's varied it depending.
Oh, okay.
Here's my code actually is a little bit better. Yeah. So the benefit actually of using the word code is that's important, right? Because what are we doing when we write software? We're writing code. We're not building containers. That's a separate thing, right? So the way CF thinks about it is, while we accept incoming Docker containers, if you have a pipeline that exists today, is we'd much rather accept the code, and the code gets pushed in, it'll handle building the container for you, and then scaling and supporting and log aggregation, and coming soon, starting at the inbound traffic routing, actually initiating Zipkin traces, which is going to be super useful because there are components of Cloud Foundry that do make up the data path or the call chain through a particular transaction, business transaction. So we want to be able to give that telemetry back to the user, like in concert with the rest of Zipkin.
The telemetry story, that's becoming an interesting story, isn't it? Telemetry around being, I think of things like Snap, which is emerging, and the visualization of the, of the data from telemetry with tools like Grafana and stuff like that. Is that becoming a more common, are you starting to see more of the visualization emerge with Cloud Foundry environments for microservices? To be able to understand the behaviors that are just so important to know?
I think that's the key. It's understanding behaviors. So when I'm in a computer, I can run a top and I can see what the computer is doing. When I'm in a microservices architecture, how do I measure what the microservices architecture is doing? So I've got not only what the system is doing, but to Abby's point about adding business values, I want to know what my KPIs are doing. How are my signups going up? How are my logins going up? How are my purchases going up? I want to see all of that to get an idea of how healthy my system is, not only from a system software standpoint, but from a business standpoint. And we do that with KPIs and graphs and metrics and all of that stuff, which you can then visualize so humans can actually start to digest that large chunk of information.
Is that what the customers are asking for? Are they asking for these visualizations? Are they needing better GUIs? Are they needing better interfaces, Abby?
Well, I think it depends on what they're using it for. I would say that any user that is managing a large scale have some type of visualization aspect to it. Either it's a dashboard that they've built themselves or acquired through a third party, or the distro that they're using has a dashboard included. But they're using a dashboard of some type to visualize the current state of their environment, the current state of their deployment. Even as I think about Concourse and the visualization of the build pipeline and having a quick ability to quickly check and say, where's my build? Is it good? Is it green? Is it red? And I think the same thing applies still to the systems. I think we've just taken that, what was these broad HP OpenView screens in a data center, and kind of elevated that up to the capability and status of your apps. And as you think about microservices, there's a lot more of them.
Right.
So is the overall health good? Are things moving through the pipelines correctly? Are there anything red? Is there anything red? And if so, the value of Cloud Foundry is the automated response around that.
And that redness needs to come quickly. I need to be able to see very quickly what's wrong, not have to go sorting through pages and pages. So Concourse is great. If you go to Pivotal in San Francisco, you can see the PDubs graphs that they've got going through Datadog. They're amazing. Sitting there just watching number of containers, number of Diego cells as it goes up and down. So you need that. And to Abby's point, as you add more apps, you just get more and more of those. So it gets to become information overload pretty quickly. So how can we quickly give you visual information to tell you yes or no things are good? And if they're good, just walk away. If they're not, it's all hands on deck to make sure things are getting to be good.
Well, arguably with Cloud Foundry, it's not all hands on deck anymore.
What
Hopefully.
is it?
I'm going to channel Tony Hansman here for a minute and say it can be done with just one person, right?
all two hands on deck.
But I'd say that's the value the platform brings. It's just no longer, I've been in tech almost 20 years now, and I remember major outages when it was all hands on deck and there was 40 people crowded around a small table trying to figure out, is it the server, is it the firewall, which server, and you're kind of working your way through the stack.
Let's never go back to that.
Yeah. No.
But now you're like, I don't know, let's take a quick look at the dashboard.
Yeah. It was interesting. To me, the visualization is the only way to interpret all this data because, so I used to think that I was dealing with a telemetry system for about 50 data centers. We had a couple million points of data, right? Items that we're actually reporting back to the system. I used to think that was big, right? But that was spread across 50 data centers. So, you could have that much telemetry data coming out of a reasonably sized CF cluster now. Like if all the apps are instrumented effectively and it's really being used to at the level of density that you can get. So you can't do anything with that much data if you're just looking at logs.
Well, just the amount of data that comes out of any machine now. With it has enough sensors on it, you can have all kinds of different data coming off of it.
And as you add microservices to that, and you start talking about logs, auditability, tracing.
Yeah.
Where is it? What is it doing? What's the current state? And the automated response around those.
And then you add the business metrics on top of that.
Yep.
You just have even more data
That's
coming
right.
out.
We're running a business.
Oh,
yeah.
the business. Somebody's got to make the business happy.
We've loaded Ubuntu Linux on Pancake Robot, and we've added, and we're putting sensors.
And you're running a business.
And yeah.
He's literally running a business.
And we're putting sensors on. We're putting sensors on Pancake Robot.
Yep.
We're getting ready for big data pancakes.
Absolutely.
We're pretty excited.
Absolutely. Pretty
about
soon,
big data pancakes.
pretty soon you're gonna have to cart around your own storage array just to store all
I
the
know.
telemetry coming off your rope box.
I know.
You
It's
live
just like,
stream the sensor data.
yeah.
It's a little
Figured out-
wagon in the back.
Yeah.
And when we hook it up to Alexa, who knows what's going to happen?
Alexa, make my pancake.
Exactly. There we go. So, changing topic a little bit.
Oh, we had one?
Wait a minute.
Yeah, of course we did. I wanted to ask about kind of you guys had the article in the Newsstack on the cloud services.
Yeah.
And we talked to the Google folks today about that. What's the next iteration on that? I'm curious, and what's the evolution of the cloud services environment that's being built out now?
The service broker API work.
Yeah.
I think the big trajectory there is that we have to serve users, and there's a reality that there are going to be multiple platforms that exist in the world, and they should work well together. Because the applications that we're talking about might rely on something that lives in a different cloud. Large cloud providers might want to offer all of their great capabilities like Google is using this common service brokerage API. So I think the main step right now is expand the use of that significantly beyond the Cloud Foundry ecosystem, which is big enough, but let's get it even larger.
Yeah.
Number one. And then number two, it's going to go through an evolutionary process, right? We're going to take the needs of lots of other organizations into account. There's different models where some companies have an interest in making sure that there's a commercial aspect to it, procurement APIs that come along, maybe as optional. And there's some other areas of work that different companies involved in the process are thinking through.
Why are you laughing?
That's a great question.
I'm waiting for her to drop the mic here.
I love watching Chip tell this story. It's amazing. Yes, we are.
What did I do? All right.
No, I think it's the service broker API and standardizing. And for those of you listeners that don't know what we're talking about and didn't read
That's
the fabulous
probably a good thing
article,
to
Wait a minute.
explain.
we're talking about standardizing the Cloud Foundry Service Broker API specification. And why would we do that? Because it is an amazing piece of technology that makes it easy for services, think ISVs, to connect to a platform. Cloud Foundry is the industry-leading technology around this, and we heard loud and clear from many other communities and platforms that they would like to take advantage of that technology as well. And for us within the Cloud Foundry community, it's a win-win. One, we have an opportunity to collaborate with these other communities and take advantage of a broader range of desires and opinions and use cases. But more than that, we have an opportunity to offer to our ecosystem the capability of writing your service against a single API and having that accessible across a lot of platforms, which is a great win for them as an ISV. And it's a great win for our users of Cloud Foundry to have that accessibility and that portability of services. So it really is a win across the board for both the community as well as the technology.
Yeah, and as an app developer, I love the fact that I can just bind whatever I want to my app. Be it IBM Watson or some Google Big Data database. Like, that's really cool to me, because now couple that with the speed of delivery of Cloud Foundry, and now who knows what apps we're going to start building. So that's super exciting as an application.
So that's an iteration on the microservices story as well, very much.
It actually is. So there are a lot of different patterns for how the Service Broker API works, but one of the patterns that's emergent, at least within the Cloud Foundry user base, is that as organizations, you might use systems like Eureka, but also maybe you're not talking about a microservice that's just within the context of your applications. You actually want to share it with the entire big organization. Think common things like inventory, right? So I have inventory for my entire company. I could create a simple microservice that supports that, assuming I had any inventory. And then that could actually be published as a service that completely unrelated application development teams could start consuming. And so the Service Broker API works really well at supporting a microservices model. There's lots of different ways to achieve, the different patterns in microservices, and this is one way to do service discovery. And there's some emergent best practices around when you use it versus something like Eureka.
I think you've got, what you're seeing is multiple ways to do things, and it really depends on my use case. If I want to let a team go fast, I'm just going to give them Eureka, let them play in this little sandbox. One of those goes big and I want to start making money on it. Maybe I want to start exposing it to the world. I can do that now with the Service Broker API. Yep. I codify how I interact with that service, and now it's, oh, sweet. I can monetize some internal data that I might not have been able to monetize earlier, which is super cool, not only internal to my company, but now to the world, which is really cool.
Yep.
Well, guys, thank you very much for taking some time. I think we actually came around to some topics that actually are pertinent besides pancakes and Zipkin, but Zipkin is very relevant, I think. But
Zipkin
pancakes
is cool.
are super important, though.
Yeah,
So
they
are pancakes.
They are, yeah.
Pancakes with Zipkin.
Distributed tracing with pancakes is important.
Distributed pancake tracing.
Distributed micro pancakes.
Apparently somebody's throwing glassware over there.
Okay, guys. Well, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Alex.
We'd like to thank Cloud Foundry, our sponsor for these podcasts from Cloud Foundry Summit in Frankfurt, Germany. Cloud Foundry gives companies the speed, simplicity, and control they need to develop and deploy applications faster and easier. It's open source, easy to iterate, and built to scale. Learn more at cloudfoundry.org.